Welcome to the Sample Chapter Podcast, the show where authors read a sample chapter from one of their books. Here's your host, Jason A. Meiske.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to episode 220 of the Sample Chapter Podcast. Hey, it's good to be back. We took a week away to get a few things knocked out. But it was nice because last week I sat down on Friday and did 3 interviews that were recorded for upcoming episodes, including today, where we are talking with England native Sarra Culleno. Sarra is widely published, writing fiction and poetry for publication, performance, print, audio, dramas, podcasts, and radio. She was longlisted for the Cinnamon Press Pamphlet Prize for Nightingale and Sparrow's full collections of 2020, and nominated for Best of the Net in 2020 by Lamba Poet. Sarra is a frequent contributor to Fevers of the Mind and to Alternative Stories and Fake Realities. She co-hosts Write Out Loud at Waterside Arts and Performance, and performs as both guest and featured poet at numerous literary festivals. And today she joins us. It's a great episode. We are talking about how she got started and how she writes, blending multiple genres like she does in this debut novel that we're kind of talking about today called Bonds, a short story collection. And she has multiple genres mixed into it, but yeah, it's all one bonding story that connects it all together. And we're discussing a little bit about that. And along the way, we're also talking about waiting for the book to be just right. And, of course, developing that through line that goes through all of her short stories. All that and so much more is coming up here in just a couple of minutes. So I can't wait to share that episode with you. As for me, nothing really that new to talk about. I've been desperately trying to keep my nose to the grindstone with my writing. Doing both the short story that I'm working on for the upcoming anthology and also working on Bandit 2. But I've also, due to circumstances, I've been kind of forced into a situation of having to rearrange everything in my office, which is also my podcast studio. And, rest assured, it's going to be for the better. It's already so much better than it used to be. But like right now, unfortunately, I don't have some of my stuff set up, so I'm recording on my laptop. I'm holding my microphone in my hand. There's a few things that's like, wow, this is quite the throwback to my first year when I was doing all of this. But, it's going to be good. I'm looking forward to it. And I think what I may do is I may take some snapshots here and there and just kind of show you the progress as it goes. I'll figure out where I'm going to share that and put it up on probably the social media, or I might try and figure out some of those stories, the video stories. Maybe I'll do like some little clips of stuff like that, and as well as maybe future guests. Who knows? We'll see what we come up with. But it's all good, and I am still working hard on all of my writing and future guests. Of course, I do all of my writing, segue, on my favorite writing software, Scrivener. Check out this advertisement to learn how you can save 20% on the regular desktop version. Jason here. Hey, I wanted to take a moment and tell you about my favorite writing tool, Scrivener. Now, I know you've heard about Scrivener because their writing software has been embraced by hundreds of thousands of other writers like you and I, from the novice to best-selling novelists. The reason we all use it is because of Scrivener's core concept to bring all the writing tools you use together in a single application. And with tools like automatic backup, character maps, project goals, and let's not forget that amazing corkboard, you can see why I use Scrivener every day. As a bonus for Sample Chapter Podcast listeners, use code CHAPTER for 20% off your desktop version. Scrivener writing software, built by writers for writers. All right, thank you once again to Scrivener, longtime sponsor of the show, and I also want to thank an affiliate of the show, Writer's Block Coffee. As an affiliate, it means if you follow the link in the show notes, or if you go directly to writersblockcoffee.com and use coupon sample chapter. You're going to save 10% on your order, and the show gets a little bit of kickback to help pay for website hosting and other fees, monthly fees that go towards the show, all of that, and it's greatly appreciated. But there's some great stuff in Writer's Block Coffee. I talk about them all the time. They have 3 delicious flavors: the Deadline Dark, their whiskey barrel aged blend, and their signature Writer's Block Coffee. Try one, try them all, order once, or set it up for monthly automatic shipping. But whatever you do, click that link in the show notes and make sure you get over and check them out. Writer's Block Coffee. It's delicious. I also want to thank my friends at Pop Goes the Culture Network. They are home to about a dozen other pop culture related shows, all of them amazing in their own right and all of them so much fun. I mentioned last time how their flagship show, Pop Goes the Culture, switched from doing one big show every Friday to now they split it up to 3 smaller shows throughout the week. And, I'm really enjoying that. That new format is really cool. But don't take my word for it. Hop on over to the link in the show notes. Click that link and you can go check it out, or just go to that website so that you can see all the different shows available, and there will be links in there as well so that you can pull them up on your favorite podcast player. Now, speaking of your favorite podcast player, I would greatly appreciate it if you would leave me a rating or review, especially if you're on, they say Apple is the best, and I understand the numbers show that it is far and away, I think 2/3 of all podcasting is still done through Apple. That's actually where I listen to all of my podcasts, is still with the Apple Podcasts. So if you're a fan of Apple, leave me a rating and review on there. It helps out the show like you wouldn't believe. But if you're a fan of the show on YouTube or Amazon Music or wherever you're listening, give me a rating and review and let me know what you think. You can also follow the show on social media. We are available on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. It's just the Sample Chapter Podcast. Follow along so that way you can see every week the new episode that I'm sharing, as well as I like to do Throwback Thursdays and for past episodes, and sometimes there's sales going on with our merchandise store that we have over at TeePublic. So if there's a sale going on, I'd like to try and share that. They like to do 35% off t-shirts at that time. Lots of places that you can follow us. Of course, if you're not a social media person but you'd like to contact the show, you can do so through email at samplechapterpodcast@gmail.com. Or I would really like it if somebody would give me a new voicemail to check out by calling 660-851-1146. And you could hear that on an upcoming episode. So come on, what are you waiting on? Give me a phone call. Leave me a message. All right. Well, that is enough of all the background stuff. It is time to hop on over to my conversation with writer and poet Sarra Culleno. Hello, Sample Chapter listeners. Welcome back to another exciting episode. And this week, we are hopping across the pond once again over to England, where we are having a chat with new author Sarra Culleno. And I'm hoping I did that right. I just narrowed that. I just corrected that, but hopefully I said that right. Sarra is going to be talking to us today about her short story collection, Bonds, and we're going to have a good time. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome to the show, Sarra Culleno.
Hello, Jason. Thank you for having me on.
I'm so happy to have you here. I can't believe it's taken so long to set this up and make it happen. I think we first started talking in December, was it?
It's been one thing after another. We've just been missing each other each time, haven't we? I'm glad we got together in the end. We're doing it now. That's the important thing.
Absolutely. Yes. Oh my gosh. I don't know about you, but yeah, my 2022 has been just crazy. And I think a few months back, whenever we reconnected, it was just like, oh my gosh, Sarra, hey, let me let's talk and let's set this up.
Yeah, well, because my book actually came out in November 21. So yeah, it's been actually crazy since then. It's just every single month something has happened to stop that. Yeah, so we're good to go today. We're good to go.
Good. Well, now, so tell us a little bit about yourself, and how many books is this for you so far?
This is my first book.
Your first book,
And
okay.
it's not a novel, it's a short story collection.
Mhm.
I guess it came about because of lockdown, because I finally had the time to do it. I've always written shorter things, poems and short stories, but I'd never collated them into a book. And I sent the first couple of stories off to my publisher, Cab Publishing. The longest one in it is a novella, and they said, yeah, we really like it, but can we have one more story to put on the end? So the very last one I wrote especially for the collection, but the other three were stories that I had. And I've heard before, like, writers are often writing the same story again and again in a different way. You're like, we've got some kind of, bugbear or some axe to grind, and we just can't stop telling that same story again in a different way. So the genre I've got it's a multi-genre short story book, which is incredibly hard to market. But there's a sci-fi in there, there's a folk tale, there's magic realism, there's all sorts. It's a big mix of genres, but they're all telling the same story about bonds and attachments, particularly between parents and children, but really any kinds of human bonds, emotional bonds.
Okay. Wow, that's fascinating. And you have all these genres mixed into it. That's really cool. So the pandemic happened, and that gave you the time. Were you home? Is that part of it? Were you like part of the workforce that had to go home, and then now you found your time?
Yeah. So the first two stories I wrote during, I don't know what it was like in the US, but the very first lockdown, the whole country wasn't really equipped for it. So I'm a school teacher, so we really couldn't do much apart from maybe a couple of hours of posting stuff and marking it and sending it back.
Yeah.
They hadn't really got up to speed with video lessons or anything like that yet.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a couple of months where I wrote those two stories, the first two. And then the third one, I'd already started to write it, but we were kind of back at work, really full capacity, more than full capacity. Actually, video teaching is more demanding than being in school. And then when we went back into the building, I caught COVID for the first time rather quickly. Within 4 or 5 weeks, I caught it, and it was pre-vaccines, and there was no sort of it was just a very crowded place without any open windows and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I caught it quite badly, and the worst thing about it was this brain fog and the inability to think straight. And becoming very exhausted very quickly. So I was off work recovering from it, and I thought one way to get my vocabulary back is to try and attack this story that had been on a back burner.
Wow.
And actually it really I could almost feel like the pathways in my brain restructuring, the neural pathways.
Yeah.
That's how I got my vocabulary back. I mean, even my speech was slurred. I couldn't really finish a sentence. It was so bad.
Wow.
And that sort of Shift F7 feature on your keyboard that brings up all your alternative vocabulary.
Yeah.
That really seemed kind of to help with the brain damage that came from COVID. So I finished that longer novella quite quickly, I think within 5-6 weeks. And I only did it because I was trying to sort of force my way through a recovery, a kind of mental recovery.
Yeah.
And it really worked. And it was great because then at the end of it, at least I hadn't just felt useless being off for that time and just suffering. I felt like I had a product produced something at least while not being able to work. So that was the third one. So that's how it came about. And then the fourth one I wrote, as you mentioned earlier, sometimes you have a deadline and you just must do it because somebody's asked you to do it.
Yes.
So the fourth story was exactly kind of the position you're in at the moment.
Yes, fortunately, my deadlines are self-imposed, and I blew right past it. So yes, everybody listening knows that. Anybody that's been listening to the show for a while, they know that yeah, I'm way past my deadline for book 2 of my Bandit Chronicles. But it'll get out there. I promise everybody. I promise. But yeah, but that's a good feeling too. I know with my first book, I finally, or the first book in that series, I finally, I had a feeling I could be done in a certain time. So I very boldly put the pre-order up. I set a date. It was like, okay, so let's see, my father's birthday is in October, and I think I can make that deadline. So that's that. I put the book up on Amazon pre-order, and then I had roughly 3 months to finish the last few chapters, get it edited, get it done, and all. And I made it. I actually had a week to spare, so I was still going back through and just kind of tinkering with it that last week. But that was a good feeling. That was nice for that one.
Yeah, so. Yeah, it's a sense of achievement if you actually get it done in the time that you've set yourself. But
yeah,
when you're in the midst of it, the stress levels, blood pressure's quite high when you're read like that.
Well, my wife likes to remind me of my first book I ever did. I announced it in spring, like the spring of 2016. I said, yes, it'll be coming out this summer. Well, it didn't come out until March of 18.
You must get it right. You don't want to release it before you've got it exactly how you want, or as close to as you think it's going to be. But in a way, it's better to put it off, isn't it? If it's not ready, it's not ready.
Yeah,
give it more time to cook.
Exactly. Yeah. And to that end, I mean, we've actually got an author, a very well respected author who's been a guest on this show, and the book he read is still up for pre-order, so technically it's not wrong, but it still hasn't come out yet either, and it's been like 3 years. So it was going to come out in October or November like 3 years ago, and I think it's coming up on 4 years, but the book still hasn't come out. But he's also very he has a lot going on, and he is a publisher, and I guess they're working with him and just got to have the book right.
Yeah, well then you get an editor involved, and then it's a whole other it's a whole other way of working with your story then, and it's still a deadline. So there's lots of kind of phases, isn't there, that you have to get through, and the writing part, getting it out for the first time, is only one of them. There's the rest that comes with it after that too. So
exactly,
deadlines are tough.
So tell me a little bit about that process of getting those first stories done. Like, what was that feeling when you finished the first part of your the short story collection, your first novella?
Right, so the novella. So I'm a real robot geek. I actually I teach media studies as well, and I really love sci-fi and Afrofuturism, and particularly robot sci-fi. And I love the way that robots are always a metaphor for a marginalized group. So the Dune trilogies and, iRobot and all of it, I've got such a big back catalogue, going back to Maria in the 1920s. I love all of it. The only problem I have with it is that I don't feel very represented. Not really until I found out a bit more about Afrofuturism. I didn't ever feel represented, and then when I had children, I became a mother, I felt even less represented. So like the Dune trilogy is a great example of this. I love it, but I think the reason why I loved it is the Bene Gesserit sort of subplot that's going on there with kind of like the female Jedi, in the story, and I just don't think those avenues are explored enough. So I wanted to write sci-fi, or a cli-fi even, it's climate fiction, including robots that signify a marginalised group in society. But I really wanted to write it about a group that, as far as I know, never really been explored in sci-fi, and that's children and their mothers, and the connection between them. So the robots I've got in my story, they've got no gender and they're faceless, and they've only got one driver really, which is like a kind of a human biological driver to protect whatever child has been assigned to them and nurture them and make sure they're okay. And apart from that, they don't really have any character. But I just really wanted to explore what happens if a whole society as well has that attachment severed, because like as a parent I can see that happening. You know, I think it's even worse in the US, but you know, returning to work after 2 weeks, I think in the US, is that what a lot of women have to do?
I think so. Yeah.
I mean, I found it very difficult at 10 months. We get 10 months protected leave, and my own children were not ready to even, you know, take fluids on their own or sit up or anything. Like, it's very clear that biologically they still really depended on me, and a 7-8 hour stretch meant that my eldest ended up in hospital. She was dehydrated because she just couldn't take fluids from anything but me. So I wanted to explore what happens to a society en masse where these attachments are severed, and it's a norm, because I as a teacher as well, I find so many sort of behavioural problems and struggles that my students are coming up against, and it seems to come, this is anecdotally, but it seems to come from insecure attachments at home, and lots of screen time and not enough attachment between the child and the caregiver. So that's my kind of sci-fi world in the future. What happens if all these attachments stay severed for another 100 years? Where do we end up?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. Did your publisher, did they have much kickback on doing different genres, making each story like a different genre?
No, that was actually my concern, because I was going to go ahead and just have it as a novella. I think it's about 90,000 words, so it just about fits into a novella. And the publisher said, can we put other stories to this? And I actually thought that's quite difficult to market, because, you know, you're not going for a particular kind of fan then, are you? I can't really market to sci-fi fans, or it's a tough sell, that, you know. But the publisher encouraged me. It's Cab Publishing, and they're based in Chichester in the UK, and they really encouraged me. They said, as long as you've got connecting themes, which you do, then that's what you can put on your blurb, and that's your kind of sales pitch to your readers. So I don't know. I'm trusting them, but I can. My initial reaction was that might be quite difficult to market, because you know, one's a 500 years ago, a folk tale, and it's in Old English. It's in, you know, Middle English terms. It's quite difficult to read. So I don't know if it all appeals to the same audiences, but the central message is the same.
Yeah, but that's in many ways that's very brilliant to have that through theme that's continuing through, whether it's the past or something present or the sci-fi. And who's to say it's not like that in the future? Sci-fi is very subjective. You never know what could come of it, and so to have that theme going throughout the whole thing is a great way to tie it all together. So it's a brilliant way to do it. So well done.
Oh, thank you. Well, I hope it works. Anyway, we'll see. Time will tell.
So what's next for you? I trust you're working on the next book.
Yeah. So I am working on my next book. It's my father lives on a narrow boat in London most of the time. He lives aboard most of the time. So we're on his boat and on the canal waterways and on the Thames, sort of whenever we get home to London. So my next novel is set on the canals and waterways in and around London, and I think it's kind of a prince and a pauper tale. And again, there's kind of overtones of magic realism, but it's never really clear. Is it something spooky, or is it just coincidence? So that's my next one. It's in the pipeline. I think I'm about 30,000 words in, so it's still early days.
Wow.
But I'm hoping it'll be, I'm not pushing it and I'm not rushing it. So hopefully it won't be a novella. It'll be a full novel, the next one. Because I'll have time to go back and add in some foreshadowing here and some exposition there. You kind of do that with hindsight, don't you? After you realise where your characters are.
Yes.
Going.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'll have more time to devote to this one, I hope.
So are you kind of editing as you go, or do you kind of brain dump all of it and then go back and, like you said, do some foreshadowing and change something here and there to make it work?
Well, I kind of plot the story out in like the biggest chunks there are, and then I write what I've got. If anything comes to me while I'm doing that, I'll go back and add it in. And then once it's done, then I go back through it, and there might be like a supporting character that might seem a bit redundant. So I need to think, well, how are they kind of heading towards something a bit more poetic, or how are they alleviating something for the central character and make that a bit clearer. If it's not so clear at the beginning. Maybe little warnings and markings that are coming for the protagonists that I haven't made clear enough. They've just kind of sailed through a scene and I know what they're headed for, but maybe going back and leaving like, I don't know, an animal analogy or something to point at it for the future, for the reader. So all that kind of stuff I'll do in retrospect, but the actual main story arc I'll do that in chunks, so I know what the story arc is, and I'll just attack a chunk of it one Saturday, and then I kind of thread them all together in a bit of a patchwork. I think that's what I do. What do you do? It's always interesting to find out, what do you do?
Oh gosh. Well, my first two books, my first one, I spent years and years working on it and rewriting the first several chapters over and over again. And then finally, I tried out NaNoWriMo and decided, okay, I know what I want the story to do. I'm going to stop thinking so hard about it. I'm just going to keep writing. And I'd actually, like, one of the chapters where I was always hung up on, I skipped it just to keep going. And and I made it. I got it. And then I went back and was filling in some other things. And I had my original, I think my original word count was like 115,000 words, 117,000. And then went back and cut that back to like 91,000, I think, is where I ended up. But that turned out a lot of fun. My second book was also just very seat of my pants. I had an idea that just would not let go. And I kept like, all right, well, let's see where this goes. And I had a blast with it. I would have finished it in weeks, but I became ill, and then the holidays came, and so it wasn't until after the holidays I got back into it, and then picked it up and finished. But that one was a lot of fun. Now with my series, I've learned the value of planning.
Right. Yeah. I guess if you have a series, you really must.
Yeah. Book one, no problem. I can just do pretty much like I was doing. But book two, it's, hey, you've got to remember there was this character there that's going forward, and there's this event. It has to have repercussions and going from there. So I know that's a big part of why book two is taking me so long, is I did not plan that. And I had reached the halfway point on book two before I realized, oh gosh, I am blending book 2 and 3 together with this. And I had stuff that wasn't supposed to be happening yet. And I didn't even realize I was doing it. I reached a point one day where I opened it up and I was like, wait a minute, what is this? why is he doing this already? And so I had to go back and essentially start over on book 2.
Oh gosh, that's painful.
So, but fortunately, I use Scrivener for my writing. So I just opened up another file, said, okay, book 3, and then dumped a bunch of stuff over to that. And then went back into book 2 and kind of picked it up from there. And that's when I started planning out a few things. And I actually went through and labeled several chapters in a row. I was like, okay, this chapter, this is happening. Next chapter, this is what's happening. And kind of went from there. And that's helped me stay to task.
So you kind of write yourself a little title of something that has to happen in the next 5 paragraphs or something. And then just do that until you finish. And then go to the next. I've used that before. That really does help you attack it in small little bite-sized bits. You don't have to feel like you've got a day or a whole weekend to do it. You can just like get a couple of hours done and then close it, leave it. That's a good one.
So it's been a learning process to change how I think of my writing and to do it that way, but it's been good, and it's nice to learn. So, well, thank you so much for joining me. This has been a blast, and I wish you all the best with your book, and it looks like it's doing really well and got some great feedback. Where can people find and follow you?
Right, so I'm on Twitter and Insta, and I have a Facebook page as well. So I guess they're the 3 best places to kind of find links to my book, and my poems are published all over the place. They're in lots of different journals and magazines and things, so they're not collated into one body, one collection yet. That's another project that I got going. I think that's the best place, because if I have something new published, like a poem or a short story, I'll put it up on those 3 handles. So very easy to click.
Perfect. All right. Well, we'll make sure and have links for all of that in the show notes so that everybody knows where to go and find and follow you, and go from there. And when your next book comes out, make sure to let me know so I can help spread the word about it.
Oh, thank you. That'd be wonderful. Thank you very much.
That's my pleasure. All right, ladies and gentlemen, time for me to step aside with my writer's block coffee and hand the floor over to my guest, Sarra Culleno with Bonds, with Bonds, a short story collection.
Okay, so this extract is from my novella called Machina ex Deus, and it's chapter 7, so it's partway through the story. It is not enough to win a war, it is more important to organize the peace. Aristotle. My hearing is abnormally reliable, considering the condition the rest of my body is in. So I hear Kennan's footsteps approaching my door before he knocks. He has warned me ahead, leaving a vlog about a potted geranium, cipher to tell me he will bring a visitor, a possible recruit to the cause. Light dapples over my roof garden through the leaves of my 2 olive trees, casting them in flickering and undulating beams. I bought them potted back in 2071, and how they have grown. From one of the trees thrusts a birdsong, a long succession of slow-delivered, low-pitched squawks and creaks. I've seen this family of olive tree warblers toing and froing for some generations now, flitting back to the tree in their dusty beige and white liveries. They have learnt not to mind me over the years, and this is why I recognise the alarm and fluster in their song. 2 white eggs, speckled in brown, lie under the tree. Sadly, the first is cracked and cannot be saved. The second, though, appears intact. A pair of bright black eyes blinks on helplessly from the branches as the mother shouts blue murder at me from her impotent distance. Fortunately for the egg, my cybernetic hand will leave no musk of human trace on it, and this should ensure the egg will not be rejected. Gently, I ease the undamaged egg back into the nest with its siblings, and sure enough, the mother hops over dutiful, immediate, to fuss over her prodigal son. To avoid tracing, they are cycling here. They will have left their visors behind and duped their chips to sleep mode by leaving them inside the stem cellars. Admirably, the woman has agreed to have her chip removed. A psychologically unsettling and physically painful process, chip removal is never accepted lightly. This is encouraging, supportive evidence that she is committed. We have a chance she has some fight in her. It was the miracle of collective will which saved us before, and I must believe it will save us again. Still, I cannot afford to let hope blind us to the practicalities. She is a Taman and fully indoctrinated from birth. She may not recognize Tamer's failings. She may not be capable of discarding her conditioning. She too pays the terrible price for our fight, even without knowing it. And people have never been equipped to agree on a shared truth while existing inside a polarizing AI. My lungs wheeze labored breath out through my oxygen respirator. The sickness minced my lungs when I was a young girl on the cusp of adulthood. Luckily for my parents, they died quickly, as adults chiefly do from the sickness. But because of my age, it took its time to devour me, although I won that battle eventually too. I used my cybernetic right hand to haul up my body from my seat. The nanometal of my pressurized suit is heavy but necessary, nebulizing a mobile stem cellar into vapor, continually circulating into my bloodstream and keeping me alive. I'm still alive and fighting. However, it will take me some time to reach the door to answer it. At Kennan's knock, I time it well. I am warmed at the sight of his face. He is beaming, his eyes dance, he is equally overjoyed. Ada, his arms fling about me. I return his embrace enthusiastically. It is so good to see you. Relief flows through me as if nebulized by my pressurized suit. I didn't suppose it was possible, but I do believe you've been shrinking again. If you weren't so pitifully enfeebled, I might be inclined to throw you off the dustpan periphery, he retorts, never missing a beat. I can't contain my smile. The corners find my ears. Come, I gesture him in through the back of my apartment to my roof garden. We will sit outside with the plants. I have some nice lemon sherbet ready to pour out there. The wisteria has popped and it smells outrageously delicious just now, you'll see. And this must be Asen. Good to meet you. I extend my hand to the woman before me and she takes it. Thank you for the invitation, Miss Socorro. Please call me Serona. Asen smiles. We brought you this. She hands me a tiny potted geranium, flowering defiantly, blue as a bruise. She wears functional overalls, a simple tunic over tailored trousers. Her hair is short. I suspect she is older than she appears. So many Tamans do not realize their mortality or life's briefness due to the age-defying effects of stem cellars. She is past childbearing, I would guess. I wonder if she realizes. The Igos are presently more in tune with the tides than human women are. Another example of the necessary and edifying work humans have offloaded to Igos, labouring under the misapprehension that we have rid ourselves of some tiresome nuisance. Serona, I affirm, and please call me Ada. Defaulting to surnames, I'm afraid, is a legacy of my military background. We sit in my roof garden, which I have cleared of clutter, anticipating its rare reception of guests. The sensory overload of colour and aroma has always calmed me. I hope it will have a similar effect on our new company. Serona, Kennan tells me you have a special interest in an Igo, that perhaps we can help each other. What can I offer you in return for information about this Igo? Primarily, I would need your agreement first that you are personally accountable for the welfare of the Igo in much the same way it has a responsibility to you. I understand this is difficult as you are independent and have no ties outside of work. It may be a steep learning curve. I begin with the easy bargain. Kennan has already briefed me that Asen is aware the Igo is sentient and that she is emotionally invested in its welfare. A week ago, I would not have believed accountability could result in character, Serona admits. The Igos are all of one character, as you say. They are singular, systematic, compelled to protect. They can certainly prevent themselves from extracting the attention of humans, but they cannot prevent themselves from focusing all their attention to their designated humans. And prolonged attention leads to attachment. The Igos are driven by their attachments. Aisen already understands this much. It is her own detachments she has not fathomed. Oh yes, in a way humans no longer remember. Igo work is essential and necessary, even more so now that humans have forgotten how to do it. In any case, the new order leaves no space for us to do it, and we are all convinced that we don't want to do it. But Tamer provides everything we need. She does not comprehend how far she has been duped yet. We work so hard to provide. All our work is valuable and necessary. The whole planet benefits from our work. I would need to be in 2 places at once to do my Igo's work as well as my own. Yes, of course, I understand how seriously you take the betterment of Tamer for the good of everybody, which is one of the reasons I agreed to see you. You have a great deal to offer us in return for help finding your Igo. You must become open to the idea that Tamer is not the perfect oasis of its namesake. Every human society is at risk of corruption. It takes a quiet, stealthy resistance from good people on the inside to prevent it. The ethicists taught us that much. I need to tread lightly here. If she fears we are extremists, she will run, and our whole operation is at risk. Where is Tamer corrupt? She challenges me. And what has this to do with my Igo? Kenan interjects, reading my thoughts. Of who are you most afraid, Sirona? That the new order could be undermined by greed, just like the old order. Of the Gadahi and their sickness. It's a reasonable fear. Look at the scars it leaves on anyone young enough to survive it. She indicates to my pressurized suit. I'm not offended. And how is that mistrust sown? How were you prevented from hearing their stories? Would you be able to absorb such conflicting narratives? Tamer has been sowing salt, Sirona. The fabric of our society is unraveling, discloses Kenan. And science, the great antidote to the poison of enthusiasm. It is good morning exercise for any research scientist to discard a pet hypothesis before breakfast to keep him young. Kenan is prone to ranting, and I can see Sirona is not yet accustomed to it. I cut him off before he ruins everything. Do you keep in contact with your parents outside of the Green Gala holiday? Am I being auditioned? That is personal, not societal, she replies guardedly. On the contrary, it is endemic, I surmise. Most Tames have no social ties outside the workplace. This is true from about 12 months of age, when Tamans are expected to spend daylight hours away from their families. At what age were you sent to board? The expected age, around 4 or 5 years old, Sirona answers. And why do you suppose that extraction was so easy for those old order algorithms? I will her to make the obvious connections, to rip off her blindfold, to force her eyes to see the ugliness under the veneer she has held true her entire life. Human biological drivers for connection, billions of years of evolved dopamine release ripe for abuse. Her answers are almost mechanical, learned by rote, without consideration of the implication of the facts she has memorized. We accept the reality of the world which we are presented. What are the consequences of 2 generations of humans living in isolation with no attachment to each other? I urge her. Focus, achievement. No time bomb, a void, rife for abuse. The victims of the old order were in a similar predicament. Attention and extraction rushed in to fill a void. At this, Aisen purses her lips, which I read as defensive, so I take another line. Don't get me wrong, you have been rewarded for calling and consciously in those formative and vulnerable years. But equally, your parents would have been socially and financially penalised for failing to ostracise their child sufficiently. You cannot deny this damaging socialisation is normalised, and there is a price to pay. The repercussions are immeasurable. Tamar will implode. Right? We are protected from attention extraction by the virus. Sirona is clutching at straws, but the arcane is dawning on her, and she cannot unsee it. That is a measure which may offer some relative protections for citizens, especially born Tamans like yourself, although it is increasingly rare to find a born Taman these days. I look at Kenan as I finish speaking, and his eyes are lowered. He knows I am about to deliver the final blow. What do you mean? Tamans live long beyond their fertile years. The trade in orphans is lucrative. The Citadel procures Gaddahi children from the fire centre. I should know. I am one. You are in the minority, as you are not yet an orphan, but we three have something in common, adds Kenan. We have all suffered a painful separation in our early lives. Tamar's entire population has this crack in its foundation. Only focused nurture can repair the generational trauma, but the instinct and skill required is no longer fully formed in Taman humans. Only Igo work can save Tamar, Sirona echoes with acuity. We need people like you, Sirona. You have ethics and you have a position. It took those brave, self-sacrificing zealots to wake up, admit failures in the system they designed, to begin the reformation. We owe it to the ethicists to repair dysfunction. I'm not a terrorist, Sirona. I'm a patriot. I look directly into her eyes and speak softly. It is imperative she understands that just like the Igos, we do no harm. The great tragedy of science is the slaying of a beautiful hypothesis by an ugly fact, Kenan adds. Sirona leans, reclining into the back of my deck chair. Her shoulders are tensed, and she blinks into an abyss. We sit silently for a few minutes. She is not battling disbelief, I don't think. I pour her an iced drink while she takes stock. Resistance is not terrorism, I offer eventually. Cooperation calls for interdependence, a concept with which you may be uncomfortable given the attachment disorders so routinely instilled in us all. But that's what it will take. That's what the Igos can teach us. A warm breeze rises up from the street far below, carrying the scent of honeysuckle and jasmine blossoms from my garden on its surf. I may not live to experience next year's perfumes, but I have planted the seeds anyway.
There we go. That was Sarra Culleno, and that was her debut book, Bonds, a short story collection, and it was fantastic. I loved that reading. There was a little bit of interference there in that middle. I think we got most of it phased out, but it was definitely cleaned up before the end. But don't take my word for it. Click the link in the show notes to follow Sarra and pick up her books for yourself, so that way you can see all the goodness that this book has to offer. Don't forget to also click the links for our podcast friends, our affiliate and sponsor, and hit that subscribe button, because we have some fantastic episodes coming up real soon, and you don't want to miss out. So until next time, take care, everybody.